Have you ever had someone in your life, someone who should have loved you, make you feel like you were just extra? Like you were the leftover, the spare part no one asked for? It's not an easy thing to admit, but that's how I spent the first 18 years of my life. My name's Michael. I'm 35 now. I live in a cozy little apartment not far from the Bay Area. I've got a steady job as a senior software engineer, a small investment portfolio, and for the first time in my life, I've got peace. From the outside, folks might say I'm living the dream. But a few months back, something happened that cracked open the past, like a rusted old box I thought I'd buried for good. I got a call from my father. It had been 17 years of complete silence. Not a word, not a message on my birthday, not a check-in on Christmas, not even a voicemail when I got my first real job. But there he was, suddenly back in my life, and he wanted something. No, it wasn't to apologize, not to reconnect, not even to see how I was doing. He wanted me to save my little sister, the same sister who was born when I was 15, the same sister they always wanted. The miracle girl, as they used to call her, the one they celebrated while they shoved me further, into the shadows. I wish I could say I was surprised. I wish I could say I didn't see this coming, but life has a cruel way of reminding you where you came from. And sometimes it does so when you're finally learning how to breathe again. This is the story of how I was pushed out of my own family at 18, and how nearly 2 decades later they came knocking at my door. But this time, I was no longer the scared boy they could cast aside. I wasn't born into hardship, not in the traditional sense. My parents had decent jobs. Dad was a real estate agent, and Mom taught high school English. We weren't poor. There was always food on the table. The mortgage got paid, and the lights stayed on. But emotionally, spiritually, I was raised in a cold house. They never wanted a son. That much was clear to me before I could even spell the word family. I heard it in whispers at birthday parties, in half-finished sentences at dinner tables, in quiet phone calls when they thought I was asleep. "We're still trying," Mom would say. "Hopefully next time it's a girl." Or worse, "We don't really have a child yet, not until it's a daughter." I was 7 when I heard that one. I remember I was sitting on the floor with a juice box, pretending to play with my toy robot, while my parents chatted with friends in the kitchen. They called me the spare, like I was some kind of leftover piece in a board game they never wanted to play. My aunt, God bless her, would try to stand up for me. "At least he's smart and kind," she'd say, offering a smile in my direction. But even then, I knew her voice didn't carry much weight. My parents would just nod politely and go back to planning for the child they still wished for, and that child, she did come. But I'll get to that later. Back then, I learned to shrink myself. I stayed quiet. I never caused trouble. I thought if I was just good enough, maybe they'd see me. Maybe they'd say, "We're lucky to have you, Michael." They never did. I found comfort in machines. Cold, logical, unfeeling machines. Computers didn't ignore you. Code didn't sigh when you walked into the room. By the time I hit middle school, I had fallen head first into programming. I'd stay late, in the computer lab, tinkering with websites, teaching myself basic HTML, JavaScript, even some old-school C++. My computer science teacher, Mr. Rizzo, saw something in me. He'd let me hang around after school, gave me his old programming books, and even helped me build my first real app. I'd come home excited, eager to share what I'd built. My mom would barely look up from her tea. My dad would grunt, maybe say, "Cool," before going back to watching TV or reviewing property listings. And when they did talk about me, it was always in the context of their disappointment. "He's fine, I guess," Mom would say. Still not a girl, though. By the time I was 15, I had stopped expecting anything from them. I had stopped hoping for approval. I had one foot out the door already, even if I didn't know it yet. What I didn't realize then, though, was that everything was about to change, permanently. My sister was coming, and with her arrival, the tiny sliver of space I occupied in my parents' world was about to vanish completely. My sister was born when I was 15, and just like that, I disappeared. It was like someone flicked a switch in our house. One day, I was the invisible boy clinging to scraps of attention, and the next, I was just gone, replaced by this tiny, pink bundle they'd spent years praying for. They called her their miracle. She got everything: new toys, soft blankets, baby photos in golden frames. Her name echoed through the house in laughter and lullabies. And me? I became background noise. Remember walking into the living room one night holding a trophy. I had just won first place in a statewide high school programming competition. There was even a small scholarship attached to it. I was shaking with pride. My dad barely looked up. My mom smiled absently while helping my sister stack plastic blocks. Week later, when she managed to stack 3 blocks, they threw her a cake party. Balloons, family, even a little banner that said, "Our Little Genius." I stood in the corner holding a paper plate, and I realized something. I wasn't part of this family anymore, so I started planning my escape. I kept freelancing, small website jobs here and there, designing logos for online shops, fixing broken scripts for clients who couldn't afford real agencies. I stashed the money away. I never told my parents, not because I was hiding, but because I knew I'd need it someday. That day came on my 18th birthday. There was no cake, no dinner, just a sit-down in the living room. My mom called it a transition. My dad called it being fair. They told me my sister needed my room, for her playroom, for her learning space, for her future. And me? I had until the weekend to leave. It was Tuesday. I tried to protest. I said I needed time, that I couldn't afford rent yet. I was still in school, still figuring things out. Dad handed me an envelope with $500 inside. "This is your startup fund," he said, and that was it. I packed my high school backpack with my laptop, a few changes of clothes, and about $3,000 I had saved from freelancing. The rest of my things? I shoved them into black trash bags. As I packed, my 3-year-old sister stood in the doorway watching me. Her big, curious eyes didn't understand what was happening. I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. The first few years were brutal. I bounced from friend to friend, sleeping on couches, sharing rooms, working night shifts at 7-Eleven, and hauling bricks at construction sites during the day. I ate whatever I could afford: ramen, dollar store snacks, leftover sandwiches when they were about to be tossed. In between shifts, I'd go to the public library. It became my sanctuary. Free Wi-Fi, working computers, warmth in the winter, and silence. I taught myself more code, read documentation, applied for jobs. I coded. Through my hunger. I coded through the loneliness. Sometimes I'd call home, just to see if maybe they missed me. Maybe they cared, but every call was the same. Awkward, short, shallow. "How's your sister?" I'd ask. "Oh, she's doing amazing. She just learned to count to 20. No one asked how I was eating. No one asked where I was sleeping. Eventually, I stopped calling. The last time I heard their voice for over a decade was a voicemail. "Happy holidays." That was it. They had shut the door on me when I needed them most, so I built my own door. It's funny how the smallest wins can feel like miracles when you're just trying to survive. The first big break didn't come with confetti or applause. It came with a ding in my email inbox. A small tech firm downtown had seen my freelance, portfolio, and my contributions to open-source projects. They were looking for a junior developer. The pay wasn't glamorous, but it meant something priceless. A real job, and with it, a place to finally call home. I showed up to the interview, wearing the only clean button-down shirt I had. I was nervous, exhausted, and running on library coffee, but I was prepared. I'd been preparing for this moment for years without even knowing it. When they offered me the position, I remember stepping outside, looking up at the gray San Francisco sky, and crying quietly into my sleeve. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in a modest part of town. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls, a lock on the door, and a mattress that was mine. No more sleeping in borrowed spaces, no more worrying if I'd overstay my welcome. I had my own fridge, my own key, my own silence. And I never took a second of it for granted. I threw myself into work. I stayed late, asked questions, devoured online courses, and absorbed everything I could about cloud systems, server architecture, and full-stack development. I didn't just want to survive anymore, I wanted to thrive. I still remember falling asleep at my desk some nights, my laptop still glowing, lines of code blinking like fireflies on the screen. But I didn't mind. This wasn't struggle, it was purpose. And slowly but surely, it paid off. Within 2 years, I was promoted. I started leading small projects. I got offers from bigger companies. One of my open-source tools even got recognized by a major platform, a company I had admired since I was a teenager. They reached out. 6 interviews later, I had an offer in hand that changed my entire life. A 6-figure salary, benefits, a stock plan, my own team, a title, senior software engineer. I bought new furniture, not out of luxury, but because I could. I built an investment portfolio. I started saving for a future that finally felt like mine, and I thought that maybe, just maybe, I had closed the door on my past for good. But some doors, as I would soon learn, don't stay shut forever. It had been 17 years, 17 birthdays, 17 Christmas mornings, 17 years of silence, and then, out of nowhere, my father's name lit up my phone screen. At first I thought it was a mistake, a butt dial, a ghost, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. His voice was older, slower, like gravel being dragged across pavement. But it was him. "Michael," he said, "we need to talk." My heart didn't race. It clenched. They wanted to meet. "It's about your sister," he said. "It's urgent." I hadn't heard her name spoken to me in years, not since the day I left, and saw her standing in the hallway, still in diapers, watching me disappear with bags full of my life. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. Not at my home, not at theirs. A coffee shop downtown, neutral ground. They walked in looking like shadows of the people I once knew, thinner, grayer, worn down, but something else clung to them, desperation. It hung off their shoulders like wet coats. They didn't waste time. "She's in trouble," my mother said, her voice trembling. I listened. Skipping school, shoplifting, getting caught with older boys and older habits. There had been drugs, police, suspensions, 3 failed rehab programs, over $200,000 gone. They were losing her, and now they were losing everything else, too. Remortgaged the house, maxed out every credit card, sold off family heirlooms. They were down to their last options. Their last option was me. My mother cried. My father looked down at the table. "She needs long-term treatment," he said. "It'll cost another $100,000. Then he leaned in. "We were hoping you'd help. Maybe a loan, or something more permanent. You're the only one who can." I sat there, listening to the people who tossed me out like garbage now asking for my help. Not because they missed me, not because they regretted what they'd done, but because they needed a bailout. They talked about family sticking together, about blood being thicker than water, about how I was doing so well, surely I could help, and all I could think was, where was all this family talk when I was sleeping in my car? Where was this loyalty when I called from a payphone on my lunch break just to hear a familiar voice, only to be met with silence? They hadn't changed. They didn't come to rebuild a relationship. They came to cash out. My chest was tight, not from guilt, from rage. Quiet, simmering rage. the kind that had been aging in me like a slow brew for nearly 2 decades. I looked at them and said the only thing I could. "I can't help you." Their faces dropped like bricks. My father tried to push again. "We can set up a payment plan," he offered, like I was a bank. "You're successful now. It's time to give back." But I wasn't their son in that moment. I was their lifeline. Their strategy had failed. And just like that, the warmth in the conversation vanished. Their eyes turned cold. My mother's voice sharpened. "How can you turn your back on your own sister?" "And my father?" He looked at me the same way he did when I was 15, and he told me to pack my bags. Like I was a problem to be handled. This time, though, I didn't shrink. I stood up. "I gave everything to build a life after you threw me away," I said. "And now you want to claim it like it's yours. But you don't get to skip the part where you broke me." And I walked out. But the weight of it followed me, because no matter how far you run from the past, it knows your name, and this time it had found me. A few days after I walked out of that coffee shop, I got another call. This time, it wasn't from my parents. It was her, my sister, the girl I hadn't seen since she was 3, the one I used to hear crying in the middle of the night while I lay in bed, wondering if maybe, just maybe, she'd grow up to know the truth. I didn't know what to expect. Screaming? Silence? Tears? But when I picked up, her voice was surprisingly calm. "Hey, Michael? It's me, Ellie." For a second, I couldn't breathe. It was like hearing a memory talk back. She started off polite, almost rehearsed. She talked about our parents, how hard things had gotten, how close they were to losing everything, how I could make a difference, save the family, do the right thing. I listened. I didn't interrupt. Then I told her gently that things weren't so simple, that there was a history she didn't know, that I had to protect the life I had built, because no one had ever protected me. That's when her tone snapped. Just like that, the warmth vanished. "You're selfish," she said. "You abandoned us. You left Mom and Dad to deal with everything, while you ran off to play rich boy." I sat there stunned. Her words cut deeper than anything my parents had said, because she believed it. She honestly thought I had left out of spite, that I chose success over family, that I had turned my back on her, and I realized right then that she'd been raised on a version of me that never existed. She hadn't just lost a brother. She never really had one to begin with. Later that night, I called my parents and asked the question I had been avoiding for years. "Did you tell her I walked out on you?" There was a long silence. Then my father sighed. My mother whispered, "We didn't want her to hate us." They had rewritten the story. They erased what they did. And in the process, they erased me. I wish things had been different. I wish I'd grown up with a sister who knew me, not a stranger built from lies. But I can't rewrite the past. I can't fix the cracks in a foundation that was never solid to begin with. What I can do is protect the peace I fought for. My parents lost 2 children, one they pushed away, one they poisoned with fiction, and now, when the dust has settled, all I have left is distance, not out of anger. Not out of pride, but because sometimes distance is the only thing that keeps you whole. I haven't heard from my parents since the last call. Maybe they finally realized I wasn't going to change my mind. Maybe they're still hoping I will, as for my sister. I don't know. I think about her sometimes, where she is, who she's with, what she believes about the world, about me. I wonder if she still sees me as the villain in a story I never asked to be written into. Part of me wants to call her, just once, to tell her the truth, not to defend myself, not to blame our parents, but to give her a choice. To know, me, the real me, or not. But I'm not ready. And maybe she isn't either. What I've learned after all these years is that not every broken thing can be fixed. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is to let go. Let go of what you thought family should be. Let go of the apology you never got. Let go of the fantasy that closure always looks like reconciliation. I built a life from nothing. Brick by brick, late night by late night, line of code by line of code. That life matters, my peace matters, and no matter how deep the guilt runs, or how loudly the past comes knocking, I owe it to myself not to lose what I bled for. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the forgotten one, the castaway, the spare, I see you, and I want you to know, you don't have to go back to the fire just because it once called itself home. Maybe one day I'll reach out to Ellie, not to fix the past, but to build something new. But for now, I'm keeping the door closed. Not out of hatred, out of healing. Thanks for staying with me through this. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of a chapter in your own life, I invite you to subscribe, leave a comment, or just take a deep breath and know you're not alone, because stories like these, they're not rare. They're just rarely told.